This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 263.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster. We have the technology.
Why, hello everybody, this is Adam Silver, the host of the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events, as always, we have WordCamp Miami next weekend. It's a big camp, the 11th year if I'm not mistaken, March 15th, 16th, and 17th. There's also a kids camp, and that should be a lot of fun. I was planning on going, and then my trip got, I rescheduled. I'm not going, so sorry about that. Unless something changes between now and, let's say, Thursday, it does not look like I'll be there. So, kind of wish I was, but not going to happen. Also, next weekend is WordCamp Kathmandu, March 16th and 17th. And I checked into this one real quick. I was just curious. It's a 35-hour flight for me to get there. So again, probably not going to happen, though I would love to go. Planning on it. And not that one, but overseas somewhere, another country would be very cool. All right, moving along, upcoming events. I'm not sorry. In the news, segment 1. Actually, this is something for the calendar as well, but it's further out, so I want to mention it early. The 4th edition of the Global WordPress Translation Day, GWTD, has been set. That new date is May 11th, 2019. This is a 24-hour virtual and in-person event bringing together new and experienced translators. And most recently, there was one back in 2017, 71 local events, 29 countries, 1,300 people RSVP'd. Pretty cool. So if you do speak another language, you want to help translate WordPress on the global level, you should definitely check that out. There'll be a link in the show notes as well. So there you go. Kind of upcoming event, but also it's newsworthy, so I want to put it in that category. Okay, moving on. Segment 2, the meat and potatoes of this week's show. This week, I want to talk about WordPress as a static site? ? Yeah. A few weeks ago, I was contacted by someone I met at a local meetup, and they wanted to discuss my helping them with their most recent WordPress issue. And I replied, and then they scheduled a call with me on my Calendly, etc. During the call, my mind was blown away. Why, you ask? Well, because for the reason that they were using WordPress to create a site locally and then export that site as a static site to re-import it back into WordPress on their own web server outside the DMZ, outside their zone on their own server from their company IP address. I had honestly never thought about part of that, the exporting of a WordPress site into a static site and then re-importing it. And the issues they had were with the export and the import because they had redesigned the site using a new theme. And that theme, in order to do that, they would import it. They had a plugin that was written years earlier. That plugin would see all the correct fields and whatnot and bring it in properly to be in a static site so things would match up properly. The redirects, all that kind of thing, which made sense for them at that moment. Now it's not working because new theme, the export tool that they had isn't written or wasn't written for this new theme. By the way, the theme in question was Divi, which is totally fine. It's a good team over there as well. So in diving more into the issue and in doing some research on this after the initial call and before our second call, because I had 2 calls with him, I came to find that this case study isn't as rare as I thought. There are plugins in the repository that actually do this, and they're current with WordPress 5.1 that still work. So people are doing this. I didn't understand why, so I did more digging. And of course, so there's benefits between static and dynamic sites, or there used to be differences in benefits. So as we all, if you don't know, before WordPress, everything was pretty much a static site, multiple pages, all flat, and that's how it was. And WordPress brought in the concept of dynamic sites. I mean, it wasn't to the first to the table, but there's a database in the back end. So, why why have 2 different versions of this on WordPress specifically? Well, in theory, easier design updates. Change it one time, it changes everywhere. Thus, the database aspect. For example, using a footer in the copyright of a footer area, as an example, you could easily change it 1 or 2 or 5 pages. If you had to change the copyright year, 2019, 2018, 2017, changing it 3 or 4 times, not a big deal. But if you have a site that has 25, 50, 100 pages or more, it's not as easy. You don't want to go into every page to change that. So that's what makes it easier running a database, a more dynamic element, right? More flexible data. is the benefit of dynamic sites. Because dynamic sites pull together all the bits that make the whole page, you can store your content and other parts of your content of your site in a database. So the advantage here is that you can easily access and edit your content in a variety of ways and have it load across multiple sites if you wanted to, through a multi-site, for example. Or, you can also search the database to easily, if it's categorized properly. So it's a lot of things going on here on the dynamic site. And this is very nearly impossible with a static site. Now, security. So security is interesting on this and what I dug into. There are some who think that a static site with no database, the site is more secure. And that was the consideration of this client in question. But a static site itself is not inherently more secure, because if it has a bad password, or is on poor hosting, or has vulnerable servers, it's still viable for someone to hack that site. You just don't know. Just because you can't see certain things doesn't mean it's not hackable, because everything that's out there, in theory, is hackable. Okay. Another potential reason why people go static versus dynamic is the speed. There's no lengthy load times when displaying the page. Now, this conclusion technically shouldn't be drawn anymore, because it depends on multiple factors. One of them being where the website is being driven from, where it's being fetched from. If you have a static website, let's say in London, but you're connecting from California, the site loading time will probably be slightly slower or considerably slower compared to a dynamic site that has some sort of CDN. And I've talked about CDNs in the past, and that way it can actually spread out the site across the world. Speed depends on the setup. A website being static does not directly imply faster loading. And this was said over and over again in all the research I did. So again, in the case of this client, they wanted security, they wanted speed, load time. And what I'm suggesting is that you need to review your true needs here. Make the appropriate decision for what you need to do in your situation. Now, I'm 100% confident that they no longer need to have a new static site. They don't need to go ahead and build it locally, export it with a custom plugin, and import it to match that aspect to be static again, which I just thought was odd. I still think it's odd. Anyway, and I don't think they need their own server. I think these days, it's been 5, 6, 7 years since their first site was built. There's a lot of changes and benefits in having a managed WordPress hosting company that they can actually build on a staging server and then push live when they need to make changes. And it'll be secure and safe. And I'm going to make those recommendations for them. Again, I'm working with a team that wasn't part of the original build from 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, if I remember correctly. So they just inherited this site and this situation, this setup, and they're open to my recommendations, which is great. And I'm going to make those appropriate recommendations moving forward. So again, static versus dynamic. Are there pros and cons to both? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I'm still sticking with WordPress as a dynamic site. The fact that it's updatable, searchable, you can add categories. It just seems to me to have a lot more pluses than minuses in every condition, in every which way moving forward. So there you have it. Just thought I'd share that with you as an experience recently with my agency side of things, and really kind of got me thinking about how we used to build sites and the pros and cons of that, static versus dynamic. Okay. Moving on here, segment 3, tip and tool of the week. This week's tip is a hardware-software combo. My friend Greg Franklin over from Desktop Server sent in to me. I'm always looking to track better time, and this I found was interesting. It's from a company called Timeular. It looks to be a physical piece of hardware that connects to your phone via Bluetooth. And the hardware itself is a oversized, I'm not sure the size yet, I can't quite tell. It looks probably, I don't know, it's a 5 inches by 5 inches. It looks like a multiple-sided dice or die that you might have used in Dungeons and Dragons and D&D or role-playing games, right? And by turning that device on different sides, it then triggers an action or a recording timer on your phone through the app, and it automatically knows. So email, meeting, phone call, automatically just does it for you. So it's a physical product that connects to the software. Looks really interesting. The site looks relatively new. I think they're in not Germany. They are in Austria, I think. There's a mention of a podcast on the website and a blog, but there's no information there yet. So I have reached out to them. I want to get more information. I really want to try this product so I can do a deeper dive review for you all and for myself, because I'm always looking to track my time better and know what's going on where. It looks really interesting. You can check it out. Link in the show notes. It's Timeular. I'm not connected to them at all at the moment, and just wanted to share that with you if you're looking for another way to potentially track time. So there you go. Okay, moving on, wrapping it up here. If you have any questions, go ahead, send it in via email, adam@kitchensinkwp.com, or use that speak pipe functionality on the website. If you want to support the show, you can become a Patreon, kitchensinkwp.com/Patreon. It's Patreon. If you want to sponsor the show, there's a form on the website. You can do that too. Thanks so much for listening. See you next week. Go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. All right, bye-bye.